Cars come with all kinds of bells and whistles these days, from heated seats all the way up to autonomous driving.
Millions think they just beat the system, but what if they walked straight into a trap? Luxury SUVs, sports sedans, gone for pennies on the dollar. Social feeds are filled with people bragging about winning the deal of a lifetime. But hidden in the fine print, a ticking financial bomb. So why are banks letting this happen? What's buried in the contracts buyers never read? And what happens when those miracle deals start rotting in driveways? Because by the end, you'll realize this wasn't a bargain, it was bait. The sticker collapse. A $90,000 dream car now going for $7 grand. This isn't a sale, it's an earthquake. Across America, social media feeds exploded with images of luxury SUVs and sports sedans marked down to prices that once belonged to second-hand hatchbacks. A gleaming German crossover, originally listed at $90,000, was suddenly plastered with a bright red sticker screaming $7,000. Videos of astonished buyers circling dealership lots spread faster than wildfire, each clip more surreal than the last. The comment sections filled with disbelief. "This has to be fake," wrote one user. Another replied, "I just drove mine home." For decades, these vehicles were symbols of prestige. They were the cars parked outside high-end restaurants, the rides of celebrities and executives, the dream machines of middle-class families who could never quite reach them. Yet in the heat of midsummer 2025, the barrier collapsed. Parking lots that once staged glossy unveilings now looked like liquidation centers. Reporters showed long lines of customers forming at dawn, some camping overnight with folding chairs, hoping to snag a once unreachable machine for pennies on the dollar. The spectacle was mesmerizing, almost carnival-like. But beneath the carnival lights lurked unease. Journalists whispered about unsustainable fire sales, economists muttered about collapsing residual values, and even car enthusiasts wondered aloud how something so valuable could plummet so fast. Those rock-bottom numbers were just the spark. The real explosion came when the crowds arrived. The buyer stampede. People aren't just shopping, they're swarming, desperate not to miss the deal of a lifetime. The frenzy quickly morphed from curiosity into chaos. At one suburban lot outside Dallas, a crowd of more than 100 people surged toward the entrance when a dealership announced it had marked down a fleet of full-size SUVs. Teachers, nurses, plumbers, even retirees clutching retirement checks all elbowed their way inside. A mother of 3 told local news she never imagined she could afford a luxury ride. Yet here she was, ready to sign paperwork on a $75,000 Escalade listed for barely over $6,000. Her children squealed in the back seat, already treating it like a victory parade. Fear of missing out drove the stampede harder than reason. Buyers spoke in breathless tones about once-in-a-lifetime steals, their logic drowned out by adrenaline. A construction foreman admitted he had no idea about repair costs or insurance rates. He just knew he could never forgive himself if he let a $7,000 luxury car slip away. For some, the purchase became a badge of pride, a way of proving they had beaten the system. Yet the rush carried warning signs. Vehicles were bought sight unseen, Carfax reports ignored, inspections skipped. People signed contracts in minutes that would normally take days to scrutinize. The emotion of the crowd became contagious, spreading from one wide-eyed buyer to the next until rational calculation all but disappeared. The showroom chaos hid a darker truth. The sellers were bleeding out faster than the buyers could celebrate. If you're watching this far, you already know this isn't just another news clip. It's something bigger. So pause for a second, hit that like button to push this story further, and drop a comment with your take. Behind the curtain. Dealers aren't feeling generous, they're fighting for survival. The spectacle on the showroom floor concealed a financial war playing out in back offices. Across the country, dealers sat on mountains of unsold 2024 inventory, their lots overflowing with shiny cars gathering dust. Every day, those cars sat idle. Interest payments on floor plan loans piled up. Banks tightened their grip, charging steep carrying costs that threatened to sink fragile dealerships. The math was merciless. Keep the cars and bleed, or slash the prices and survive another month. Managers described sleepless nights as they watched balance sheets deteriorate. One regional director admitted that selling a $90,000 SUV for $7,000 wasn't generosity, it was triage. The alternative was bankruptcy. Automakers pressed dealers to clear backlogs before the 2025 models arrived, turning pressure into panic. Some stores had so many unsold units they rented overflow parking from nearby stadiums. Each unsold car represented not just a sunk cost, but an anchor dragging the whole operation under. From the outside, buyers saw opportunity. From the inside, owners saw desperation. The gulf between perception and reality grew wider with every slashed sticker. Dealers hoped volume could offset collapse, but the math rarely added up. What looked like a gift to consumers was in fact a lifeline for businesses gasping for air. Cornered dealers didn't just discount cars, they opened the door to dangerous tricks, the rotten core. That bargain luxury car, it may be a rust-ridden wreck with a pretty face. Not every miracle deal was what it seemed. Behind the gleaming paint jobs lurked vehicles with twisted histories. Some had been salvaged after collisions, rebuilt just enough to sparkle under showroom lights. Others carried odometers rolled back by tens of thousands of miles, their true wear hidden behind falsified paperwork. A sleek sedan bought for $7,000 in Houston was later revealed to have spent 2 winters in the Rust Belt, its undercarriage corroded nearly to failure. Another SUV that looked showroom fresh had once been submerged in a flood. Within months, its electronics failed in waves. Dealerships desperate to move stock often skirted disclosure laws, burying accident reports in fine print or avoiding them altogether. Cosmetic repairs disguised deeper problems, and sales staff urged buyers not to overthink minor blemishes. Some buyers discovered too late that their bargain vehicle had been declared a total loss in another state before being resold across borders. For every happy customer bragging online, there was another filing a complaint with regulators, stunned that their supposed dream machine was already crumbling. The bargains may have looked irresistible, but too many came poisoned with hidden costs and structural flaws. For many, the true wreck wasn't in the metal. It was in the fine print waiting at the bank. The financing time bomb. 7% interest turns a miracle deal into a money pit. For many buyers, the thrill of signing on the dotted line overshadowed the fine print. A $7,000 price tag on a car once valued at $90,000 seemed like salvation. Yet when the loan papers arrived, reality bit. Used vehicles carried interest rates 2, 3, even 4 times higher than new cars. The national average for used car financing hovered near 7%, compared to incentivized rates as low as 1.9% on brand new models. That difference added up quickly. A family celebrating a miracle purchase often found themselves chained to a monthly payment that devoured their budget. Consider the math. A used car loan stretched across 6 years at 7% interest could transform that $7,000 bargain into nearly $10,000 by the end of the term. Meanwhile, a new vehicle at a much higher sticker price, but with heavily discounted incentives, could cost less across the life of the loan. Buyers seduced by low entry costs discovered they were in fact signing up for long-term traps. The shock was emotional as well as financial. People felt tricked, even betrayed, when they realized their supposed victory was draining them every month. The loan papers were only the first fuse. The blast spread straight into the used lots. The used car bubble. One fire sale sparks another. The bubble is swelling. What began as isolated panic sales quickly reshaped the entire market. Wholesale auctions, where dealers trade inventory behind the scenes, reported spikes of 10 to 15% in early 2025. The cheap luxury collapse distorted pricing at every level. Dealers desperate to offset losses raised the tags on ordinary used vehicles. A 5-year-old pickup with nearly 100,000 miles suddenly carried a $30,000 price tag, simply because the frenzy around discounts made inflated numbers feel normal. Trade-in values were swept into the surge as well. Owners who brought in mid-tier sedans were shocked when dealers offered more than expected. On the surface, it looked like a blessing, but it was a mirage. Any bonus on the trade-in was erased by the inflated cost of the replacement. The paradox was brutal. While top-end luxury collapsed to the floor, the middle of the market ballooned beyond reason. Ordinary families looking for reliable commuter cars faced sticker shock even worse than during the supply shortages of 2 years earlier. The bubble grew with every transaction, feeding on panic and hype. People thought they had scored savings, but the inflation infected the next deal waiting on the horizon. Shoppers thought they'd won until their bargain wheels rolled straight into the mechanic's bay. The false savings. A cheap Mercedes becomes a nightmare when the first repair bill hits. At first, driving away in a luxury car for the price of a used minivan felt like winning the lottery. But within months, reality arrived in the form of insurance premiums and repair bills. Luxury models demanded parts that were scarce and expensive, many shipped from overseas factories facing supply chain snarls. A simple suspension repair could cost more than the purchase price of the entire vehicle. Insurance companies, wary of high replacement costs, jacked premiums premiums sky high for even the steeply discounted models. Stories spread quickly. One young couple in Florida bragged online about buying a bargain German sedan for under $10,000. Within 6 months, the transmission failed, and the repair estimate exceeded $12,000. Another buyer in Ohio thought he had secured a family SUV for $8,000, only to discover his annual insurance premium was nearly $5,000 because the model was classified as high risk. The so-called savings dissolved into stress and resentment. The emotional whiplash was severe. The joy of beating the system turned into a grinding dread each time the mail brought a bill. What once felt like freedom began to look more like a cage, built not from steel, but from financial obligations that piled higher every season. Every breakdown became someone else's business plan, feeding an underground market few ever saw coming, the shadow economy. Every fire sale deal spawns a new hustler. As legitimate buyers staggered under hidden costs, opportunists moved quickly to exploit the chaos. Flippers snapped up discounted SUVs and sports cars, turning them around for quick profits in private sales. Some resold them online at double the price, banking on demand from less savvy buyers who had missed the initial wave. Gray market exporters filled containers with bargain American luxury vehicles, shipping them overseas to markets where demand remained strong and regulations were weaker. On the streets, curbstoners, unlicensed sellers masquerading as private owners, flooded classified ads with once-in-a-lifetime deals. Buyers lured by online listings often discovered after the fact that they had purchased a flood-damaged or heavily modified vehicle with no legal recourse. The frenzy gave cover to fraudsters who preyed on desperation. Even organized crime circles reportedly dipped into the trade, laundering money through quick turnaround sales of discounted cars. The secondary market thrived on the confusion, feeding profits to opportunists while leaving ordinary families with little but regret. For every genuine buyer hoping to escape debt, there was another hustler turning the situation into easy money. The hustlers thrived in the shadows, but the spotlight was about to swing back to the factories. Automakers under siege. Factories designed for profit are choking on panic. The shockwaves that started on dealership lots did not stop at the sales floor. In Detroit, Munich, and Tokyo, executives stared at spreadsheets littered with red. Unsold luxury models stacked up like unsold toys after Christmas, their glossy paint gathering dust in storage depots. For decades, automakers had built strategies around steady demand for prestige vehicles. Now, those assumptions collapsed overnight. Boardrooms that once buzzed with confidence fell into silence as leaders debated drastic moves. Production lines slowed to a crawl. Carmakers trimmed shifts, canceled optional packages, and in some cases halted entire model runs. A flagship sedan planned for 2026 was abruptly shelved, replaced by cheaper designs meant to move faster. Electric vehicle projects, once heralded as the future, faced delays as cash reserves thinned. Engineers privately admitted that innovation had been put on hold, while survival took priority. Even advertising campaigns shifted tone, from glamorous aspiration to bargain-heavy urgency. The global recalibration rippled outward. Suppliers faced sudden cancellations of orders for chips, glass, and steel. Workers in battery plants and design studios were told to wait indefinitely. For the first time in decades, the image of the automaker as an untouchable giant cracked. The factory floor itself became fragile, proof that even billion-dollar corporations could stumble when the ground shifted beneath them. Corporate panic rarely stays private. Before long, lawmakers smelled opportunity. Political sirens. Lawmakers smell blood and votes. As the spectacle of collapsing car prices dominated headlines, politicians saw an opening. Consumer protection advocates called press conferences demanding stricter oversight of dealerships. State attorneys general promised investigations into bait-and-switch practices, inflated used car tags, and hidden salvage histories. Senators introduced proposals to strengthen lemon laws, insisting that Americans deserved transparency in an industry known for secrecy. The fury of voters made action unavoidable. At the same time, industry lobbyists swarmed Capitol Hill. They warned that overregulation could suffocate fragile dealerships already teetering on the edge. Lobbyists argued that desperate discounts were not predatory, but necessary for survival. They insisted that intervention might trigger mass closures, leaving communities without local sales or service networks. The clash turned into political theater, a tug-of-war between promises of protection and the reality of corporate influence. For everyday citizens, the hearings sounded both hopeful and hollow. They wanted accountability, but but knew the auto industry wielded immense power in Washington. News clips showed lawmakers grilling executives with sharp words, but behind closed doors, deals softened the blows. Voters were left wondering if real change would follow, or if this was just another round of empty speeches. As the speeches echoed, it was paychecks, not policies, that vanished first. Labor's boiling point. When cars don't move, paychecks vanish. On the ground, the fallout was immediate and painful. In dealerships from Florida to California, sales staff saw commissions evaporate. Once lucrative jobs turned into desperate hustles to move a single vehicle. Mechanics reported shortened shifts, their service bays empty as warranty work slowed. Receptionists, detailers, and finance officers faced sudden layoffs. The human toll spread quietly, masked by the noise of headlines. But it was felt in rent payments missed and grocery budgets slashed. Factory workers fared no better. Assembly lines that had once roared with activity idled as automakers canceled shifts. In Ohio, union members staged protests outside shuttered gates, holding signs that read, "Cars stop, families suffer." Across the Midwest, cafeteria workers and janitors who depended on auto plants for steady income suddenly found themselves jobless. The chain reaction extended beyond factories. Truck drivers hauling vehicles, suppliers providing parts, even local diners feeding workers, all felt the downturn. Unions pressed for answers. Leaders demanded that automakers protect wages and benefits despite the slump. Negotiations turned heated, with threats of strikes echoing across industrial towns. For many, the promise of secure manufacturing jobs, long considered the backbone of the middle class, now looked fragile, threatened by market chaos beyond their control. The chants on factory lines grew loud enough to shake the glass towers of finance. Wall Street watches. The market doesn't just see discounts, it sees disaster. Investors treated the frenzy not as a bargain, but as a warning. Shares of major automakers slipped as analysts downgraded earnings projections. Headlines shouted about collapsing residual values and shrinking margins. Pension funds and retirement accounts tied to auto stocks lost ground. For Wall Street, the slashed prices were not a consumer windfall, but a red flag waving across balance sheets. Banks felt the pressure too. Lenders that had underwritten massive volumes of auto loans suddenly faced higher risks of default. If buyers who leapt into cheap luxury cars could not keep up with interest, repossessions would climb. Every repossession represented another hit to credit markets already strained by rising rates. Insurance firms braced for higher claims as questionable vehicles filled the roads. Even rating agencies began issuing quiet warnings about the sector's long-term stability. Investors, always wary of contagion, feared the collapse could spread into other industries. The auto market was vast, entangled with steel, electronics, energy, and finance. A crack in one corner risked shaking the entire system. Markets thrive on confidence, and confidence was bleeding away one fire sale headline at a time. The tremors from dealership lots were rattling skyscrapers on Wall Street. Markets can weather storms, but your household budget can't hide from the next shock. The consumer trap writ large. This frenzy isn't about cars, it's about debt chains. The image of buyers storming dealerships for once-in-a-lifetime bargains masked a darker truth. The real cost of ownership was just beginning. Families who believed they had beaten the system soon faced ballooning monthly bills. Interest payments stacked higher than expected. Insurance premiums surged beyond affordability. Repairs drained savings accounts one invoice at a time. And when the math no longer worked, repossession agents appeared like ghosts in the night, towing away the dream vehicles that had become financial anchors. Declining resale values made matters worse. A car purchased for $7,000 today could be worth only $3,000 tomorrow once the market corrected. For families who had stretched their budgets to seize a luxury brand, the realization hit hard. These cars would never build value, only consume it. Budgets once reserved for school tuition or medical bills now bent under the weight of surprise auto costs. The promise of mobility had transformed into chains of debt, heavy enough to reshape household futures. The shock was deeply personal. A bargain purchase that once symbolized triumph now felt like betrayal. For many households, the lesson arrived too late. The frenzy was never just about cars. It was about the fragility of personal finance in an economy designed to pull consumers deeper into obligations they could not control. What begins in the driveway soon rattles the ports of the world. The global chessboard. What starts on an American lot hits Beijing, Berlin, and beyond. The sudden collapse in pricing was not confined to American suburbs. European automakers, long reliant on premium branding, scrambled as their carefully maintained price ladders toppled. A German sedan could no longer command prestige abroad when images of fire sale bargains in the United States went viral online. Chinese electric vehicle makers, once poised to dominate exports, saw contracts canceled as buyers demanded impossible discounts. Tariffs designed to protect national markets became tangled weapons in a war of collapsing value. Ports from Hamburg to Shanghai reported unexpected disruptions. Ships carrying finished cars idled as buyers renegotiated or withdrew orders altogether. Governments found themselves dragged into the storm, with ministers of trade issuing emergency statements to calm jittery investors. In Beijing, planners worried that price chaos could undercut their ambitious state-backed electric revolution. In Berlin, unions pressed leaders to shield workers from cascading factory shutdowns. Even Tokyo, long known for resilience, braced as its export-heavy strategy faltered in the face of collapsing demand. What had begun as an American dealer spectacle was now a worldwide economic chess match. Each move by one government triggered countermoves across oceans, the rules rewritten in real time by forces no leader could fully contain. The global storm was fierce, but it also revealed that ownership itself was already breaking apart. The end of the old market. Maybe the car you buy isn't yours at all. The collapse exposed a truth that industry insiders had whispered for years. Ownership itself was on the verge of extinction. Automakers and technology firms seized the moment to push new models, subscriptions instead of purchases, mobility as a service instead of private garages. Why risk a collapsing resale market when you could lease indefinitely? Why fight for financing when a monthly app payment delivered the same ride without obligation? For consumers battered by hidden costs, the pitch was seductive. Subscriptions promised simplicity. Leasing promised stability. Rideshare partnerships promised convenience. But beneath the shine was a shift in power. The consumer no longer owned the asset. The company retained control, dictating terms, prices, and even access. Already, Silicon Valley firms were rolling out pilot programs where cars could be summoned like streaming shows, on demand, paid by the month, subject to cancellation at any moment. Traditional automakers joined the race, not out of vision but desperation. A market where vehicles gathered dust on lots was unsustainable. By rebranding cars as a service, they sought to turn volatility into predictable revenue. The old dream of proud ownership passed from parents to children began to fade, replaced by a subscription login and an expiration date. The showroom was only the first domino. Larger industries were already leaning. You've seen how deep this goes, and we're not finished. If you want the next piece before anyone else, now's the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. The story unfolding ahead will be even bigger, and you won't want to hear it secondhand. Stick with me, because the real shock is coming. The road ahead. $7,000 luxury cars are just the smoke. The fire is bigger. The spectacle of collapsing auto prices is not a contained story. It is a mirror reflecting fragility across the entire consumer economy. Just as buyers were lured into unsustainable deals on cars, households are stretched thin by rising rents, volatile mortgage rates, and credit card balances that balloon past endurance. The same forces, cheap money, speculative bubbles, and overbuilt industries, loom over housing, technology, and even healthcare. When the first crack appears, collapse can spread faster than anyone expects. Analysts warn that today's automotive crash is a dress rehearsal. Housing markets in some regions already show signs of strain, with prices deflating in ways eerily similar to luxury cars. Consumer credit delinquencies climb steadily, hinting at households fraying under pressure. Technology giants float subscription models for everything from software to refrigerators, echoing the auto industry's pivot. Each thread ties back to a single question: how much control do consumers really hold in a system designed to extract value at every turn? The smoke of cheap cars may fade, but the fire beneath still burns. The industry collapse is not an end. It is a warning, a signal flare pointing toward larger systemic shocks. And for ordinary families, the most urgent question remains unanswered. Because if this is how cars crash, what happens when the next industry follows? You've just seen how the cracks in this system are spreading faster than anyone wants to admit. But this is only the beginning. The next chapter isn't about what's collapsing. It's about what replaces it and who's left standing when the dust clears. Don't walk away blind. Hit subscribe right now, turn on notifications, and join this community digging for the truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know how you see this playing out.